Welcome, everybody. My name is Zach Olson, and thanks for joining us today for another installment of the Iowa Center's Small Business Essential Series. Real quick before we get started, we are recording this so that we can share it on our website. And I encourage everybody to use the chat function for continue checking the chat function, for any links and resources that we share throughout, and to submit any questions or comments that you have about the presentation today. Okay, last week we tried something a little new, and I think we're going to try to do the same thing this week. Today we're going to learn about QuickBooks Online with our presenter, and then you will receive a follow-up email very soon afterwards from my colleague Ben Schultz. He will be inviting you to schedule a one-on-one coaching session with a volunteer here at the Iowa Center so that you can get a little bit more hands-on and ask any follow-up questions you have about QuickBooks. It's an extremely helpful tool that saves so much time and headache for small business owners. So we want to make sure that everybody fully understands the product before making a decision whether or not to use it. Here today to walk us through QuickBooks Online is Brett Moellers. Brett was born and raised in Northeast Iowa. He started his accounting career up in Minnesota, working as an audit specialist focused in the healthcare industry. And today he fulfills his dream every day back here in Des Moines, helping small business owners with many of their financial and tax needs. With that, I'll turn it over to Brett to talk about small business accounting with QuickBooks Online.
Sounds great. Thank you, Zach. Thanks for the introduction. And welcome, everybody. Like we were saying, we're going to talk about some small business accounting today, and then we're going to jump in and focus on QuickBooks Online and many of the features it offers. So my first few slides are actually going to be going through some of the accounting basics, and then followed by the features in QuickBooks Online. Also, there's my contact information. We all can see the laser pointer here, so here's my contact information if need be. And so hopefully my papers roughly don't make too much noise, so I apologize for that. I haven't been on Zoom a lot, so bear with me here. So my first slide here is starting with the accounting basics. And one of the main things behind the accounting basics is double entry accounting, meaning debits are always going to equal credits. This is done in the software automatically a lot. So I just want to give you guys kind of what the software is doing. And off to the side here, you'll see a nice image. It starts up here with the balance sheet accounts and then the income statement accounts. So these accounts, this is where you'll typically find these accounts, and they will be on the balance sheet. And then the accounts below, you will see them on the income statement. So over to the right a little bit, you'll see the areas that are white and the areas that are grayed out. The white shows the default balance of that account. And what do I mean by the default balance? The default balance means that if you debit, for instance, cash, which is the default balance, is going to be a debit, you are going to be increasing that account. So if you debit your cash account, you're going to be increasing that account, and that is the default balance is going to be a debit balance. Now, something for like accounts payable, who do you owe? So if you credit your accounts payable, you are going to be increasing that account. If you credit your sales account, you are going to be increasing your sales account. And if you debit any expense accounts, you're going to be increasing those expenses. So it just gives you a little insight to what's going on behind all of the transactions in QuickBooks. So just to go through a couple of examples here, let's say you receive money from the sale of a customer. Now we receive money into our cash, or into our bank account, and so we are going to be debiting the cash and crediting the sales, because a credit to sales increase, and that transaction would be complete. Now, to make it a little bit more complex, let's say we are invoicing a customer and then later receiving the payment. So if we are invoicing the customer, that's going to be an accounts receivable debit, increasing our accounts receivable, who owes us. And then the other side of that transaction, the credit side, is going to be increasing sales. And then the second part, it's going to be a separate transaction for the second part of that. When we actually receive the payment, we are going to be once again debiting cash, but this time we're going to be crediting our accounts receivable to decrease our accounts receivable. And just a quick third example, let's say we're spending some money on rent. So that would decrease our cash balance by a credit, and it would debit the rent expense account. Just so hopefully that gives a little bit of insight behind the double entry accounting, which is going to be, regardless of any software, that's really the what's going on behind the scenes. So on to the next slide here. We are going through some more accounting basics, and I briefly wanted to touch on cash versus accrual accounting. It might not seem all that important, but it really is. It's really good to know what your reports are telling you. And in QuickBooks Online, you can switch between cash and accrual accounting simply by a click of a button. QuickBooks Online makes it really simple. So cash accounting, as soon as you receive money from your customers or clients, that's when the revenue is recorded. And on the flip side of that, when you're spending the money, that's when you are recording that expense. Now that is cash accounting. A lot of people do their taxes based on cash accounting, so it is a very important thing. Now on the other side of things is accrual accounting, which is a different accounting method completely. So under accrual accounting, you record revenue when you earn the revenue. And something in QuickBooks, it'd be when you invoice somebody. So as soon as you send that invoice out, that's when it's going to show as revenue earned on your profit and loss or income statement. And then the other side of that is going to be when expenses are actually incurred, that's when you are recording that expense. Now, a good example of the difference between cash and accrual accounting is going to be something like an insurance expense. So insurance you pay for several months at a time. Let's say you have a $600 bill for 6 months. So under the cash accounting, as soon as you pay that bill, you have a $600 expense. Under accrual accounting, you would break out that expense over 6 months. So you'd have $100 each and every month under the accrual accounting. So I think both of these methods for small businesses are important. You want to see what you're bringing in under cash accounting, what you're actually bringing in for money, which is important on the report. And under accrual accounting, you'll want to see what you're actually earning in the month as well. So I think both of these methods are important. Now, moving on to the financials. So when you hear banks or your accountant or whoever talk about financials, really it boils down to two reports. One is the balance sheet, very important report. The other is your income statement or profit and loss. Now on the balance sheet, this report is used. I mean, it's really fantastic report, and you can use it to check the accuracy of your books, and it really should reflect reality. So if we're looking at the balance sheet over here to the right, and we're looking at that savings account as of August 31st, 2020, that savings account, that balance right there, if we look at the bank statement, should tie to what's actually in your savings account. It should reflect reality. You know, same thing for, let's say, your credit card. That MasterCard should have a balance of $709 as of August 31st, 2020. If there is discrepancies, we should know why, and and there might be errors in your books if there is discrepancies. Now, on the normal checking account, this is something we're going to get into a little bit later, and the checking account will typically vary from your books to your actual bank statement, and that is how you figure out what that difference is. You should be able to explain it, and typically there might be some outstanding checks. An outstanding check is something that you have sent out, you sent it out in your books, but it hasn't cleared the bank account, and you want to keep an eye on those. Those are very important. So, and also just to point out on the balance sheet, the assets are going to equal your liabilities and owner's equity. So everything will balance. QuickBooks will make sure things are balancing for you. So um, moving on to the next section here. This is the second part of the financials. This is your profit and loss. And it is really a key report for any business. So for the profit and loss, you can run it several different ways, but for this example, we just have August of 2020 here, and we're showing what we brought in for income and where we spent your money basically. Now this profit and loss is prepared on an accrual basis, and if you remember earlier, the accrual basis, it means we earned $7,242 earned and invoiced them. So this shows how much money we made, and then it shows where we spent the different spent our funds. Now your net income is a very important number. It can reflect, it should closely reflect your taxable income. Now for tax purposes, there are some differences. You might not be recording your depreciation every month on your books, and your account may adjust for that at the end of the year. For something like meals and entertainment, typically only half of those meals and entertainment are going to be deductible for tax purposes. Yeah, so I mean, there's a few things to keep an eye out for. Something like automobile expense for tax purposes, you might not be taking the actual cost, you might be taking something like mileage. So there might be some differences between your tax books and your actual QuickBooks Online, or whatever software you may use. So moving on to the next slide. Oh, forgot to mention one thing that that we get a question on a lot. So something like if you had an expense that was coded under job materials, but really it was more for a maintenance and repair. For your own purposes, it might be important to get those in the proper category. From a tax standpoint, it's not going to make a difference. You're still going to get 100% deduction, whether that was recorded under the job materials or the maintenance and repair. Something just a good piece of advice. Really, that'd be for your purposes to make sure it's in the right category. Now let's move on to the next slide and focus on QuickBooks Online. Hopefully the accounting basics was helpful. But I just prepared a slide just to kind of talk about a little introduction to QuickBooks Online and why I recommend it to a lot of my clients. Now, it is a cloud-based software, and what I mean by cloud-based software is you can log in really on any computer and get access to your books. The desktop version, you're kind of married to one computer. You can only get access to your books on one computer. This way, you can open up really any laptop, open up your web browser, and jump on your books in pretty easily. And also, you can get real-time access with your accountant. I can have a client call and be on their books in a matter of a couple seconds. So we can be looking at the same thing. It makes it really easy. QuickBooks Online is constantly improving. There's a lot of updates that come through, a lot of new features that come through, rather than the desktop version where you might only get a few updates here and there. It does have a mobile app. I'm a huge fan of the mobile app. It allows you to invoice, and it's great for people. You can invoice off the mobile app, take payments off the mobile app, and is really a great feature, especially for somebody. A lot of business owners are constantly on the go, so it's a fantastic feature for that. Mileage tracking, this is something we're going to get into detail later, so I'm not going to hit on it too much now. And then we also have bank feeds, which we're going to also get into quite a bit later. Invoicing, which actually all these features we are going to get into quite a bit later. But just know that the QuickBooks Online does have quite a few features that a lot of other softwares don't use. So just moving on to the next slide, shows us a quick slide about pricing, and this slide doesn't show up the clearest. So I'm going to pull it up and in this browser here. Hopefully everybody's able to see that. Kind of lists out, and this is back to the presentation. I know you won't really be able to read that too well. It lists out the different products for QuickBooks Online. There's really 4 of them. There is one other one, which is a self-employed one, which is a little bit cheaper, but that doesn't do double entry accounting. So I don't have it listed here. One of the things I really want to point out with the pricing is if you sign up through like a wholesaler, which as an accountant, we are a wholesaler. The Bookkeepers is a wholesaler of QuickBooks Online. We get half the price of this. So instead of paying the $40 for Essentials, QuickBooks Online Essentials, we get charged $20, and then we might charge the client $25. So, and that's for the life of the product. So as long as you have QuickBooks Online. A lot of the specials out here, which I'll pull that slide back up again. A lot of the specials out here, you'll see the QuickBooks Online Plus, for example, normally $70 a month. They're only offering 50% off for 3 months. Where if you sign up through us, it's for the life of the product. So moving on, just to let you know, the Plus version is the most popular version, and a lot of times we do recommend that. And then the next slide, I just kind of have it pulled up here to talk about QuickBooks Online payroll pricing. I'm not going to get too into detail on that. Now, getting started with QuickBooks Online. This is a slide I'm also not going to spend too much of your time on. Just want you to know that you can easily import, if you have QuickBooks Desktop, it is literally a click of a button to get everything imported to QuickBooks Online. It's really just a piece of cake. But in the chance that you cannot import from QuickBooks Desktop or maybe whatever software you're currently using, I would talk to a QuickBooks Pro advisor. We can get a hold of QuickBooks to make the transition easy. One of the things that is important, you will want to grab like your last filed tax return and make sure things are tying out from that last filed tax return and getting your books up to date and current. Now, using a lot of the QuickBooks Online features, if you're not able to import and we just simply have to manually type in the last filed tax return balances, using QuickBooks Online and the bank feeds can make this a breeze and really get your books up to date fast. So jumping over to the next slide. Now on this slide, I'm trying not to jump between screens too much for you, but on this slide, we're gonna be jumping over to an example of QuickBooks Online. But before I do that, I wanna talk about the QuickBooks Online bank feeds. And once again, I'm gonna show you it here in just a little bit. But this allows you to link your bank and credit card accounts right to your QuickBooks Online. Some other softwares do this already, but I think QuickBooks Online far surpasses it with how they're able to do it. Keep in mind, when we're talking about the bank feeds, it's importing it from the bank and it's putting it into your QuickBooks, but it doesn't do it necessarily automatically. It acts like a holding take before you add or match transactions in QuickBooks. So let's, I'm not even sure what I did there. Oh, I think I got a plus. All right. Let's go to an example of Craig's Design and Landscaping on QuickBooks Online.
Hey, Brett, we've got a question in the comments. You mind if I ask that real quick while you're pulling that up?
Sure, yeah.
Let's say I'm a brand new business and I have nothing to import. Where do you begin?
For a brand new business that has absolutely nothing to import, or they haven't been on any software in the past, you can simply just start. you can start and set up your chart of accounts, how you'd like to see them. And then you can go in, and I would start by importing things from your bank feeds, which is something we're going to show you here just a little bit. So yeah, that's really where I would start.
Does that include manually typing things in or importing saved documents or a combination of the two?
You wouldn't have to manually type anything in if you haven't had any prior history or prior software. You wouldn't have to manually. You can simply just link it up and put in everything, all your past history in there. So that's how I would start from scratch.
Perfect, thank you.
Okay, now jump into this is QuickBooks Online, and this sample company. I do provide the link below in the presentation. And this is something anybody can go on and you can play around in here. It's available to anybody. So if you're thinking about QuickBooks Online and just want to see kind of how it functions, this is a great tool to use to jump in here. And if we go to banking, you'll notice how it's laid out here. There's a checking account, a savings, and a MasterCard, and these are already linked up in this example. So if you were to link a new account, you just go over here to link account, and then it asks for your banking information. You simply type that in. A lot of times it's the same login that you use to actually get into your books online or your banking online. And they make it really, really simple to do there. So, and the chance that you are not able to import directly from your bank, there is a lot of workarounds, which I'm a huge fan of in QuickBooks Online. The majority of banks, you're at least able to export transactions to Excel, which you are able to, if you're able to see over here, you can upload from a file in QuickBooks Online. So you can export from your bank to Excel, and then you'll have to format it a certain way for QuickBooks Online, but then you can import into the bank feeds using that Excel file. And also, if in the case that you are only able to get just a PDF or document for your bank statement, at least at the bookkeepers here, we do use PDF extraction softwares, which allow that PDF to be extracted to Excel and then imported into QuickBooks Online. So just know that there are several ways to get this bank feeds feature to work. It's a very key feature. So I'm going to go through these transactions have imported into the checking account. I'm just going to go through a few of them here. So you will notice, and keep in mind that this is a holding tank. These transactions came over from the bank and they're just sitting here. They're not really in your books unless we add them or match them to an already existing transaction in your books. So a lot of these transactions are matching up. So we'll see one at 910. Okay, this came over from the bank. We just simply click match, and we can select multiple at the same time. We want to make sure that that they are in fact a match. On occasion, it will try to match something that might not actually be the same transaction. So you want to keep an eye out for that. But these are all really good to go, and we will hit accept, and it will add all those transactions in at once. Now going back to the top, you'll see it has a description for a rental, and we will type in the vendor. Okay, we had a rental as the vendor, and we'll add that, and we'll simply save that. And that added a rental to your vendors. And the category is also known as the account it will go to. Category equals account is the same thing there. And we're just going to simply put it to equipment rental for job expenses. And another feature we can use is the create a rule feature. Now this one is very important to use with your bank feeds. It makes quick work out of things. So in order to create a rule, we'll want to say, okay, if every time we use a rental, it is going to be for an equipment rental, and we can put that category down there. And then it also wants to auto add that, and I usually take this off because I like to review the transactions before they're added into the QuickBooks instead of it just importing and then adding that already. I typically don't like it to do that. So I just created that rule, and you will notice that it will say rule right here and what account it's going to, highlighted there in green. And we can select these and simply hit accept. Now this, a rental, this was going to be like a deposit return. So you can see rental backhoe from the bank feeds information. It was a refund of the deposit. So we will also put that to the equipment rental. And then there's some other expenses. We'll just quote them here quick so we can work quickly through this. Sometimes they might find a couple matches, as it did for this one. It said 2 records found, and we can see which records were found there. It could either be for a bill payment to Books by Bessie or to an expense. That's the 2 it found there. And you'll want to go back to your bank statement and see which one it should be matched up to. So from the bank detail, it does say Pam, so we will keep it there as an expense to Pam. And same thing for Squeaky Clean Car. We see a couple transactions trying to match up there. And we know that's one's for Squeaky Clean Car Wash. We can go ahead and match them up. And I'm gonna work quickly through these so I'm not taking up too much of your guys' time while I'm sitting here. We will go through and match these up. And Chin's Gas, we will add as an auto expense or a fuel expense. Now, when we click that add button, just remember that we are adding that specific transaction into our QuickBooks Online. And Tim Phillip Masonry, we're going to say this is maybe for some job materials. And Hicks Hardware, we can also put the job materials. And that codes all the transactions in that checking account. We can go over to the savings account. It already has a match there, so we can match that up. And then we also have the credit card account, which is also linked up. And we can match this to transactions as well that are already in our books. You know, work quickly through these. And we have some Amazon. Oh, I added that as a customer. It was supposed to be added as a vendor. We'll put it under office supplies. Now let's say lowers lamination. We don't exactly know what that was for, so we'll put that in uncategorized expense, and that's a nice account to use if you're not exactly sure where to put something. That's a good account to use in reference to if you need to go back to it. Okay, now moving on to the next thing. I'm going to jump back to the presentation here. And the next thing I want to focus on in QuickBooks Online is reconciling. And we're going to jump back over to Craig's design example. Reconciling is a key feature in your QuickBooks Online, and really with any accounting software, reconciling is a massive feature and needs to be done at least monthly. And some people do it quarterly, and some people wait until all the way to the end of the year. So I think reconciling is huge to make sure you're picking up all the transactions that you need to in your books and making sure you're expensing everything and deducting everything that you need to. So what is reconciling? It is grabbing your bank statement or credit card statement and comparing it back to your books. So you grab that bank statement and say, okay, I see this transaction on there. I check it, and you go through and make sure things are tying back and forth. And it's very important to keep an eye on things that are not clearing your bank account. So, for example, if you have deposits that were entered in your QuickBooks, but for some reason they're never showing up in your bank account, that could be an issue. That could be a pretty big issue. And others example of transactions not clearing your bank account is old checks. Say you wrote a check to somebody and for some reason it was never cashed. I would keep an eye on that because there could be errors with your books. It might not be that they haven't cashed it. They might have very well cashed it. For some reason, you're not picking that up in your books, or you might have duplicated a transaction. And then QuickBooks Online, along with the bank feeds feature, make reconciling very easy. And I'll pull that Craig's landscape, and so we can take a look at the reconciling feature. And we go to the reconciling by hitting this gear icon and clicking reconcile. And we will get started. And I'm just going to type in a balance here, which we're going to edit later. And we're going to reconcile. So this ending balance is going to come directly from your bank statement. And then we enter in the bank statement date, which will go September 30th, 2020. And we will start reconciling. Now, let's say you accidentally entered in the wrong information into your ending balance. You can simply click edit information and enter the correct ending balance and date. So you'll notice right off the bat, it says there's a $0 difference between your books and the bank statement. But you got to keep in mind, there is a ton of outstanding transactions, transactions that haven't cleared your bank account. And those are really what you want to focus on when you're reconciling. Now we'll take a look here. So you will see that this little green lit up icon shows that came over from bank feeds. And you hover over it, it'll say manually added from bank feeds. So I'm not going to go through every single transaction on here, but if you can sort several different ways. And this allows you to see, okay, why we have 2 office expenses in here for Mahoney mugs. So something's going on there where we might have duplicated that when we added it in from bank feeds. It's just a very important thing to keep an eye on. So let's say, okay, well, why would that be in there twice? It looks like it is duplicated. We already had that check in there, and now we added an expense as well. So we can go and edit this transaction, and we can simply delete it. Now, you'll notice that our books are now $18 off until we re-click that $18 amount and just put a simple check mark by it. And you'll notice as we go down here, there's several transactions that look like duplicates. This definitely has a lot of good examples. Normally, there won't be hardly near as many duplicates as this example shows. The software works a lot better on matching up transactions than shown here. But it just this really highlights issues that can come up when you are looking at bank reconciling. Just keep in mind, you're really going to want to focus on these transactions that are in your books, but for some reason aren't showing up in the bank account. And a lot of the reason is that they are duplicated there. So we are just going to hit finish now, just to keep things moving. Don't want to keep up too much of your time on that. And then we are going to go to look at the reconciliation report that we just created. So this report shows several things, but one thing to focus on is the unclear transaction as of 9/30/2020, and it will list them out here. So there is a lot of unclear checks and transactions. So a lot of these are going to be most likely they look like issues that you might have a check that's outstanding just simply because somebody hasn't cashed it yet. But if it's a debit payment or some type of expense coming right out of your bank account, then then it's most likely something was entered wrong there. And it could be that you entered it into the wrong bank account. Could be various reasons. So, and unclear deposits is also a big thing to keep an eye on. So if they haven't cleared the bank and you're showing that you received those payments in QuickBooks, there could be errors there. Really things you want to drill down and fix. Now we're going to jump back to the QuickBooks Online slides. And the next thing I want to talk about is invoicing in QuickBooks Online. QuickBooks Online makes it very easy to create invoices. And one of my favorite things with QuickBooks Online is integrating with QuickBooks Payments. Now, QuickBooks Payments is another feature that you can sign up for. It's kind of like a credit card system where you are able to accept credit card payments, and you are also able to accept payments via bank transfers online. We use it for our own books, and it's how we bill a lot of our clients and customers. So we're able to send an invoice out and simply say, hey, we only allow them to pay with the bank transfer, which is a less of a fee than having to pay with a credit card. With a bank transfer, QuickBooks only charges us a 1% fee. So if we have a $100 bill going out, QuickBooks will only charge us $1. Now, if it's a credit card, a lot of times those are going to be about 3.5% fee. So on larger bills, that can really add up for a small business. So I'm gonna go back into the QuickBooks Online software and show you some examples of invoices created in that sample software. But over here, like I was just saying with QuickBooks Online and QuickBooks Payments, you're able to send out invoices easily with QuickBooks Online. And this is an example of the email the customer would receive. And they would be easily able to simply click this button, which says pay invoice, and enter their banking or credit card information to pay that invoice. And it's simple as that, as soon as they do that, pay that invoice, QuickBooks automatically creates a transaction. It will automatically create that payment in QuickBooks Online. You'll get a notification that they paid, and that invoice will no longer show as open. So let's go into QuickBooks Online again. I'm experiencing some lag here. Sorry about that. Okay, and we're going to go to sales and invoices. And there's several different tabs you can choose from. I'm going to go over to customers. And here's that. Oh, sorry about that. I'm not sure why it's lagging right now. We're going to go to Amy's Bird Sanctuary. And we're just going to click on a recent invoice that was already created in here just to show you what's going on. So for this invoice, we're going to see the email that you can send that invoice easily to. And we see that the product or services, it was weekly gardening, looks like 4 hours, $25 an hour. And we checked it, we marked it as taxable. And this is taxable, looks like in California. Now, one thing that's really fantastic with QuickBooks Online is the sales tax feature. So you can, if you're small business, and let's say you go around maybe doing painting or something like that. So you're moving from location to location, job site to job site, wherever you're performing that service is typically where you should be charging sales tax. So we're around Des Moines. So a place like Ankeny is only charging 6% sales tax, where if you're actually in Des Moines, you should be charging a 7% sales tax. QuickBooks Online, if you add in a location address or a service address, it will calculate that correctly for you. Now, it's also important to keep an eye on it, but it should really do a lot of that work for you, making sure the appropriate sales tax is being charged. Now, to go a little further into the invoicing in QuickBooks Online, now you'll notice over here that this has already been paid. It has a 0 balance due. And so you've already sent this invoice, it's been paid. And if you want to look at that payment, you can simply click on that. It will take you over to the payment. And this is the payment received. The reason I'm showing you this is I want to point out the undeposited funds account, which can be very confusing for new businesses kind of starting with QuickBooks Online. The undeposited fund account looks like it acts like a clearing account. So as soon as you receive money in, put it right to that undeposited funds account, noting that that payment has been received. You just are holding it until you can make it to the bank, make a deposit. And up here we'll see that, okay, this $108 was deposited on September 9th. So we'll click on that and we can look at that actual deposit. So you'll notice that this wasn't the only check deposit on that date. We also have the $108 and $300. So the total amount of $408 was deposited on September 9th. And you'll notice another link up here that shows the online banking match. So when we imported from the bank, is able to match this. That's what we actually clicked on earlier. Anyway, I'll close out of that. I just really want the undeposited funds. I want to kind of harp on the undeposited funds account, how useful it can be. Instead of in QuickBooks, a lot of people will deposit each and every deposit separately. And if you just go ahead and use this bank deposit and undeposited fund feature, it really makes quick work of it. We really want to tie to the bank account. We want to make sure that deposit is tying back to your bank statement. So that $408, as it was matched up in the online banking, should tie exactly to your bank statement. Now I'm going to log into, if it will let me here. Here we go. I'll log into our QuickBooks here. And I'm going to create an invoice in our actual QuickBooks. And you just go to new and invoice. Oh, and it kicked me back out for some reason.
Brett, while you're getting back in there, I've got another, a question and a comment.
Sure.
It's really annoying that QuickBooks holds the credit card payments for 5 days before depositing the payment. Is there any way around that, or is that pretty steadfast?
Actually, that's a newer feature, something that there is a newer feature that they now came out with called an instant deposit. So they do charge a little bit, and I'm not sure exactly what that rate is, but you can ask if you have quite a few QuickBooks payments coming through, whether it be via the bank transfer or credit cards, you can ask for that instant deposit. And there's certain rules that I don't know off the top of my head, but you can get that in your bank account really quick. So I'm just kind of going into an invoice here. I'm going to put the bookkeepers as the customer. And the only reason I'm showing you this is the online payments thing in QuickBooks, which you can mark if you will allow them to pay via bank transfer or credit card, or you can click both. Just keep in mind it's cheaper for you if they just do the bank transfer and not the credit card. Credit card fees can be kind of expensive. So I just want to show that to you, and then once you hit save and send, it will send them an email allowing them to pay that invoice. And I'm going to jump back to the slides here. And this, once again, over to the right here, they'll get an email like this, and they'll be able to enter that pay invoice in there. And I'm going to jump to the next slide. And just briefly touching on, not going to spend too much time on this slide, but bills and payments, and tracking bills can be very essential for QuickBooks Online customers. But I want to say at the same time, it's not going to be for everyone. We have a lot of people come in where it's simply not cost effective to enter every single bill and then pay it through QuickBooks Online. Sometimes it's easier if the client just handles that themselves, and it's definitely more cost effective. So, but I just want to focus on that QuickBooks does work with bill.com, and you can pay bills online within QuickBooks Online. They do charge a $1 fee for an ACH transaction or a $2 fee for checks there. So, where's my mouse at here? And hopefully I can move over to the next slide here. Oh, my mouse quit working. All right, I think things might have froze up. Oh yeah.
Go ahead and take a couple questions. Give that a minute.
Okay.
Hopefully it unfreezes at some point. So for somebody who's been using Quicken for personal and business, is there a smooth transition to QuickBooks Online where they can keep transactions up to date, or do they need to go back to the beginning of the year and categorize everything again?
I would have to look into that specific software. I know there's a lot of different software that are able to work with QuickBooks Online.
Looks like we have a couple technical difficulties going on. Sorry, everybody, right towards the end there. In the meantime, hopefully we can get Brett back very soon, but I'm going to say, like I did in the beginning, in addition to today's presentation, we'd like to offer everybody a 30-minute one-on-one coaching session. Everybody that participated today, excuse me. So we're going to be sending out a little bit more information to everybody on how to schedule that appointment in a follow-up email. That'll come from my colleague, Ben Schultz. So you should receive that within 24 hours. If you don't, let us know and we can forward that information to you. And I'm gonna plug, since we still have a little time here, I'm gonna plug one more new education platform that we have. It is called Dream Maker. Some of you might be familiar with Dream Builder, and this is a new one. As a small business owner, you probably know that all of the uncertainties and challenges and anxieties that came along with opening your business don't just go away after you've opened. They shift right along with you and your business. So whether you're looking to understand how to expand or solidify and sustain your current business, establish your identity in your community, or learn how to make a bigger impact, or you just want a refresher on all the important aspects of small business ownership, we've got a brand new program. So please check that out on the website, and we have a little bit more information and a registration link on the website. So make sure to check that out. And I'm going to see, I'm not totally sure that we're going to get Brett back here. Thankfully, we're right at the end of our session here. So I think luckily we're going to be scheduling 30-minute one-on-one coaching for everybody. So if you have additional questions, and please make sure that you schedule that, and we can hopefully get the rest of Brett's information and PowerPoint out in that email to everybody as well. So for the time being, we're going to say so long, and thank you so much for joining us today.